It's my great pleasure to invite Mr. Roger Casale, a great friend of Civil and the director of the Westminster Alliance for Ukraine. And I could say many other things about his great and rich career as a politician, but also as a civil society actor, intellectual, and lobbyist for peace and freedom of Ukraine. But I won't go any longer. I'd like to invite Mr. Casale to address this gathering, this conference, and also to announce that he is also part of the first panel, which is part of the working part of this conference. Roger, hello.
Thank you for all that you and your marvelous team at Civil Centre for Freedom in Skopje, North Macedonia, do defend democracy and human rights. And let me, on behalf of the Westminster Alliance for Ukraine, join you and join our dear colleague, Dr. Wolfgang Ressmann from Media Dialogue, in welcoming the other panelists and all our guests and all those who are watching today's conference. And Jabir, you are brilliant at bringing us all together. You brought us together last year at this time during Human Rights Week. You brought us together this year during Human Rights Week, and no doubt you will bring us together again next year in Human Rights Week. And we were with you last year, we are with you today, and we will be with you next year. And the reason for that is because we, like you, stand with Ukraine. And we, like you, recognize that the future of Ukraine is the future of Europe. And we, like you, recognize that what this is about is not just territory, it's about our freedom and it's about our human rights. And as you rightly said, out of last year's conference at this time came the publication Defending Democracy and Human Rights, put together by Dr. Ressmann and yourself and Heather Robertson, who I'm delighted is with you in Skopje today, and we would look forward to hearing from her later on. Came your podcast series, Eyes on Democracy, and came the Westminster Alliance for Ukraine. And the Westminster Alliance for Ukraine is an alliance of parliamentarians, of civil society activists, of business people, of researchers who are working with the Coalition of the Willing to make the Coalition of the Willing, the goals and noble ambitions of the Coalition of the Willing, a reality. And what are those ambitions? To support Ukraine now militarily and in terms of the economy, to help to build the capacity of Ukraine to be an independent and free state, and of course central to that must be, as Wolfgang has explained, media freedom, now and in the future. And that's why we all have a job to do. Some of us have a big job to do, some of us have a small job to do, and all of those jobs, whether large or small, matter so much to the people of Ukraine. And so once again, I thank you, Jabir, and your team for bringing us together at this time. I thank our dear colleagues who are here with us, and I thank all who are watching this, who stand as we do with Ukraine at this time, now and in the future. No act of solidarity is too small. Slava Ukraina.
Heroyam Slava, Roger. This is the end of the ceremonial part of the opening addresses part of the conference, and I thank every speaker here, and now I'm very glad to invite Heather Robertson to the panel. She will be the moderator of the first panel. She will introduce it, and I will take this microphone away now and let the work begin. Please, Heather, take your seat here.
I'm Heather Robertson. To introduce myself quickly, I have been a researcher and practitioner in the field of human rights and conflict resolution in the Balkans, and in particular North Macedonia, for some 20 years. I have received my degrees from University of California at Berkeley, where I wrote about Macedonia and now North Macedonia, and from Columbia University and the Harriman Institute at Columbia University in New York City, where again I wrote about North Macedonia. Currently, I'm at the University of Virginia, where I continue to research and also do research on the former Yugoslavia and Balkans more broadly. So what will we do on this panel? The panel is called War in Ukraine, Hybrid War in Europe, and the Global Democratic Struggle. So what we will do is we'll examine Russia's war against Ukraine as the central front of a broader global confrontation over democracy, human rights, and the international rules-based order. The speakers will analyze the impacts. Is this okay? Oh, thank you. The speakers will analyze the impacts in Europe and beyond of what we call hybrid warfare, by which we mean the type of warfare that combines military aggression, disinformation, cyber attacks, and proxy influence. This discussion will highlight Ukraine's resilience. It will highlight the geopolitical stakes for Europe and the Western Balkans and the global democratic implications of the war's outcome. And we will do that in 1 hour. We'll try. No, we will. To save time, I'm going to introduce the panelists as I call on them to speak. Each will have 5 to 6 minutes in this initial phase. Then I will play a video from our contributor, Professor Edward Joseph, who is a conflict management expert at Johns Hopkins University, who could not join today, but we want to share 2 linked proposals he has just made before a congressional body in the US. And then if time permits, and I really hope it does, I would like to give at least our panelist, Dr. Yevhen Tymbalenko, and possibly an additional participant a moment to respond to what Professor Joseph will say. So I will start if Yevhen Tymbalenko, if he is online. Okay, I'm not sure if you can hear me. I will introduce you. Dr. Tymbalenko is a Ukrainian media and communications scholar focusing on wartime journalism, information security, and the impact of Russian disinformation on democratic societies. He has worked extensively on analyzing propaganda narratives during Russia's full-scale invasion and on strengthening Ukraine's information resilience through research, education, and cooperation with international partners. I'm sure Dr. Tymbalenko could speak to us on any topic of your choosing. I know that we would benefit from any sort of update on the situation in Ukraine through your frame of analysis. Please, thank you.
So thank you. Thank you so much for the invitation. First of all, it is really honor for me to participate in such a conference. So as my partner Wolfgang Ressmann said before, we just finished a third stage of media dialogue project where we are talking with our partners from, of course, Ukraine, Georgia, Armenia, Moldova, and Belarus about democracy and how we can support our democracy and how we're losing our democracy right now. So it's really, really important things, but I would like to change a little bit the vector of our conversation and told you about Russian aggression and how Russian war in Ukraine is not only physical war, but also informational war. It's understandable. And 3 years I stayed in Ukraine during full-scale aggression, and then I received invitation from German University of Mannheim, to continue my research in Germany. So I moved to Germany, and now I'm researching how Russian propaganda impact on societies inside of Ukrainian societies here in Germany. So I am not a refugee. I'm a, let's say so, working migrant, but I also use the same informational channels as Ukrainian refugee using here in Germany. And I feel that they are continue stay in their informational bubble, and some forces, some power don't let them go outside this bubble and stay inside and not integrate in society, in German society, or in some way developing. That's why I try to check my idea and launch the project which will research impact of Russia propaganda and forming narratives as a result of Russia propaganda inside of Ukrainian societies. Here in Germany, especially in refugee society. So the field of my study and my research is Telegram channels because they are not controlled, uncontrolled, and it is very easy to share any ideas through these channels. So maybe it's hurt me because I'm Ukrainian, and everything what happens in Ukraine hurts me a lot, and maybe I'm not enough objective. That's why I need to prove my idea, or not to prove. It's better to that it's not true. It's just my feelings. But still, I want to check it and make some research. So also as a result of our conversation during our previous project, we are all partners from different countries, understand that we are fighting not only for our lands, not only for territory, of course it's very important, but we're also fighting for our national identity. We are fighting for our freedom and to be independent in our ideas. So this is my short speech for now. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cymbalenko. That is much appreciated. Our next panelist, I believe he's on, is Roger Casale, who we just heard about. We just heard from in the introduction, but quickly, I'll tell everyone again. Roger is the director of the Westminster Alliance for Ukraine. He is the co-founder of the Defending Democracy Global Initiative and a former member of the UK Parliament. Roger Casale is a British human rights advocate. He, as I said, a former British MP and founder of the New Europeans International, and he's been heavily involved in advocating for Ukraine, traveling in multiple places in Europe to speak to parliamentarians about support for Ukraine's freedom, security, and recovery. Roger, it's so good to see you, and I know we would benefit from receiving an update on your work, and also how you communicate when you are communicating with policymakers and parliamentarians. How do you communicate the geopolitical stakes of Ukraine for all of Europe and really the world, and what kind of traction are you seeing in these efforts?
Hello again, everybody, and thank you for this opportunity to share a few reflections with you on behalf of the Westminster Alliance for Ukraine. And in answer to your question, Heather, about how to get traction on this issue, I think the first thing I would say is to remind people that we mustn't see the Ukraine conflict in isolation. The front line of the conflict in Ukraine is not the border of Ukraine. We have cyber attacks in Europe and around the world. We even have the overfly of Polish and Lithuanian territory, drone attacks, and so on. And we also need to remember that we are in the eye of a global conflict. We've been, in fact, as a global community, on the road to a new new world disorder for some time, and we need to see the Ukraine context also in that vein, because we are in Human Rights Week, and let's not let that moment pass without sending our congratulations to the legitimately elected president of Venezuela, to Marina Machado, who had to escape from her own country wearing a wig to be able to join the celebrations following the award which her daughter had to receive in Oslo of the Nobel Peace Prize, while Vladimir Putin gets on the phone to President Maduro, who stole the election from her, and Donald Trump bombs outside of the rule of international law Venezuelan oil tankers. This is not something from science fiction and make-believe. This is happening this week while we're having our deliberations about Ukraine. And I think we mustn't lose sight of the fact that we are on a road, and we have been on that road for some time, to a new global disorder, where what counts today is not international law and democracy, it seems, but power. Who has power and who wields power? It is a world of chaos, of confusion, and I'm afraid also of corruption, of great corruption. And the great beneficiaries of this are the authoritarian regimes. And of course, we face a challenge in democracies. And the challenge is, and I know it myself because I won 2 elections in my constituency and I lost the 3rd. And if you have democracy, you have elections, and you can win or lose elections. And so governments understandably are very preoccupied with winning elections. And this introduces an element of instability, which authoritarian regimes don't have to face. So they can wield their power without accountability. And they can sow the seeds of chaos and confusion, which creates enormous problems in democratic politics, but not a problem for them, an opportunity for them. And we need to think very carefully about how we can get across this. And I think one of the things we need to do is to, those of us who do believe in democracy and human rights, is to come together as we have been brought together today by Jabir Doral and his brilliant team. And we need to also support leaders, democratic leaders, who are standing up for democracy and human rights. It's easy to criticize them. It's easy to paint everybody with the same brush. We should not do that. We need to recognize leaders such as the Prime Minister of Italy, for example, who is standing with Ukraine. Now, I'm from the centre left. One can have different points of view, centre left, centre right. But this is a moment of crisis for democracy. We are in the eye of an international storm, and we need to stand together. All who want to be democracy defenders, human rights, need to stand together. So that's the second point. And we need to trust our leaders more. We need to mobilize parliamentary support, which is what we're trying to do with the Westminster Alliance for Ukraine. And we need to mobilize public support, and we need to trust ourselves more. We need to trust ourselves that we are on the side of history, and that ultimately democracy and human rights will prevail. And we're facing an attack, as I've said, on many fronts. This will be something that is in our living rooms and that is out there in space, in satellite technology and so on, and everything in between. And we have a job to do as citizens to be critical, not just of our leaders. And I say we can be critical, but we need to be broadly supportive of those who are standing with democracy and human rights, but also of what we see on those social media and everywhere else. We need to be able to be much more resilient as a society in the face of these hybrid attacks. And one place we can look to learn how to become more resilient is Ukraine, because who would have thought 4 years ago, and we are close to the 4th anniversary of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, that given the resources that Ukraine had at the time, it would be able to withstand that invasion. Putin has not been able to secure his war aims, and he will not be able to secure his war aims, but the war will continue. And as I've said, the borders are not just in the territory. It's not just a battle about territory. It's a battle about values. And the front line is not just the front line of Ukraine. It's here in our living rooms. And so what we need to do, and what we need to say to politicians and to the European publics, is wake up and realize that the threat that Russia poses is not just to Ukraine, it's to all of us in Europe. And we are not prepared. We are not prepared militarily, and we are not prepared either in terms of the amount of defense spending that we have, or the capacity we have, or the degree, and this is extremely important, the degree of coordination between the different defense systems, because there's no point in spending a lot more money on defense unless we have good communication, unless it's deployable. So what we're seeking to do, and I'll just finish with this, with the Westminster Alliance for Ukraine, is to build a coalition and alliance of politicians who can support the leaders in the coalition of the willing in providing more support for Ukraine now and in the future, but can also help to mobilize more public support. You rightly said, Heather, that I was an MP a long time ago, from 1997 to 2005, with Tony Blair and Gordon Brown and Robin Cook and people like that. And when I came into politics, what I came in to do was to promote democracy and the values. And today, in 2025, we have to defend democracy. This book from our conference last year is called Defending Democracy, because democracy is under attack. And I look to all of us in this room, but also not just to the leaders, as I've said before, not just to the leaders and to the parliamentarians, but also to the public. And I think we need to understand that much of the resilience of Ukraine has come from the Ukrainian people themselves. And the future of Ukraine must lie in the hands of the people of Ukraine itself. And the future of Europe must lie in the hands of the citizens of Europe ourselves. And what I would like to see, as well as stronger military support and economic support, is also support for civil society in the European Union, outside Europe, in all of Europe, and in Ukraine, because that is where the real strength is going to come from, and sustainability and resilience in the future, from building a stronger civil society. And this is a point that we try to get across to MPs. We're currently working particularly with MPs from Poland, France, Germany, Italy, and the UK, but other countries as well. I'm delighted to see our colleague Egli here from Lithuania, to really get that message across, that we need to wake up European publics. If you live in Lithuania or Poland, you're aware of the Russian threat, but if you're in further away, perhaps you're not. We need to wake up. We need to understand that this is a threat to our democracies. We need to have trust in ourselves and mobilize our societies to do what is necessary. We know what is necessary. The coalition of the willing has the right ambitions and aims, but actually being able to deliver what is necessary is going to be a huge task, and it's going to require strong engagement from MPs and much more public support. And that is exactly what we're trying to mobilize with the Westminster Alliance for Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Roger. Next, I would like to, well, had I known what Roger was going to say, I would have said, next I would like to hear from Professor Dr. Oliver Andonov, who will speak on some of these, I think, very prescient issues. But we had a plan, and I think I will stick to inviting Dr. Francesco Gaudiosi next, and then Professor Dr. Oliver Andonov after to speak, but just to we'll close out the online portion. Okay, so Dr. Francesco Gaudiosi is the Vice President and Executive Director of the Centro Studi Internazionali. He is an international security scholar and senior analyst specializing in European geopolitics, transatlantic relations, and hybrid threats. As Vice President and Executive Director of the Centro Studi Internazionali in Italy, he is also a leading contributor to the Westminster Alliance for Ukraine. And in those capacities, he advances research and strategic dialogue on the implications of Russia's aggression for regional and global security. Dr. Gaudiosi, I welcome your contribution. Perhaps you could speak about the geopolitical stakes of the outcome in Ukraine and any updates you can provide on your work. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's a real pleasure for me to see each other, even if online, after our updates and our conference in Rome in the month of October. And so this leads me the possibility also to continue my analysis on how there's many topics, and also the topics that are under discussion and analysis today: the war in Ukraine, hybrid warfare, with regard, of course, to the European region and the delicate issue of the global democratic struggle are influenced and interconnected altogether. Of course, the Russia full-scale invasion of Ukraine is widely condemned in international legal terms as a flagrant breach of international law. It violates the UN Charter principle prohibiting the use of force against state sovereignty and territorial integrity. To this end, I would like to analyze and to briefly, of course, take into consideration the response of the European Union both at the external dimension and in its internal profile, since the European Union has had the chance to respond to Russia's war in Ukraine with unprecedented unity, leveraging both EU law and policy tools in support of Ukraine and European security. That's why I'm speaking of this double dimension, the external and the internal dimension. Of course, we are speaking now, of course, in recent days of the hot topic of the EU sanctions on Russia that have been expensive, targeting hundreds of individuals and key sectors of Russia's economy, such as energy, finance, defense across multiple rounds. The EU has also frozen Russian state assets, including central bank reserves, and is actively exploring legal ways to use frozen Russian funds. We need to consider 140 billions of euro in immobilized assets to finance Ukrainian reconstruction. And this is, as we all know, a very delicate and interesting topic of discussion at the European level. Moreover, I would like to consider the point that the EU has also launched many initiatives, such as the military assistance mission in late 2022 to train tens of thousands of Ukrainian soldiers on the EU soils. And so, together with these, the topic of the defense against hybrid warfare that drastically cut reliance on Russian gas is another delicate point that for me is worth mentioning. Since on this topic, the topic of hybrid warfare, the European Union has responded through many legal instruments such as for example, the Strategic Compass of 2023, the Rapid Cyber Response Team that can assist member states under a cyber attack. And during a recent, this is a very recent update that I would like to point out at an October 2025 summit in Copenhagen, the EU leaders warned that Russia is already involved in a hybrid war in Europe, as the Danish Prime Minister said. They agreed in that occasion to bolster border and aerial surveillance, including plans for the so-called drone wall of sensors and air defenses along eastern borders to stop intrusions. Of course, NATO has welcomed these moves, and several allies have already started joint air policing specifically against drones. And Europe is also working to remove the economic leverage Russia, such as, for example, reducing dependence on Russian gas and diversifying suppliers to blunt the impact of energy blackmail. Finally, I would like to conclude my intervention by saying that the war in Ukraine has been widely framed as a critical front in the global struggle between democracy and autocracy, as Roger, Shabir were saying before. Ukraine is a sovereign democracy whose people chose a pro-European democratic path. And it is being brutally attacked by a state seeking to subjugate it. Many analysts and leaders argued that the outcome in Ukraine will have the far-reaching implication not only for the Ukraine itself, but actually for the future of democracy worldwide. In the West, there is a near consensus that a Russian victory would embolden autocratic regime everywhere, whereas a Ukrainian success would bolster the cause of liberal democracy and the post-1941 international order. So I would say that the trajectories are many, and of course, while the West is largely united, not all countries share the same fervor in this ideological framework and in this ideological framing, such as, for example, China, the Global South, that have different vision on this topic. But what is at stake, the outcome of the war, will send a message about the strength of collective security and the fate of the post-Cold War norms. If Ukraine's sovereignty is upheld and Russia's aggression is repelled, it will reinforce the principle that borders cannot be changed by force. A win for the international rule of law and a validation of democratic countries' willingness to band together in defense of these principles. Thank you very much for your invitation, and of course I remain available for any other questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to invite Professor Dr. Oliver Andronov to the panel. He is here with us today. Professor Oliver Andronov comes to us from the Department of Security and Crisis Management at the Military Academy, General Mihailo Apostolsky, here in North Macedonia. Professor Dr. Andronov is a leading expert in defense studies, crisis management, and security policy. He is a veteran analyst of regional geopolitics, examining hybrid threats, military doctrine, and the evolving security environment in the Western Balkans. His academic and public engagement includes extensive work on Ukraine, democratic security, and the implications of Russian influence operations in the region. Dr. Andronov, I've read your work. I've read your really prescient analysis on the civil media platform on the ways that the Russian hybrid warfare has operated in North Macedonia, how it can exploit, I think you're on, how it can exploit local historical grievances, ethnic fragmentations, and you write of how this hybrid warfare is transforming as well. So what could you tell us about that?
Thank you very much, Heather. Are you hearing me? Yes? Okay. Thank you very much, Heather, for you present to me. But general, I am the professor of the defense and the peace and development and conflict resolution. It is my doctoral thesis. But the conflict, it's not only the internal conflict, it's the general is the external conflict, the conflict in the international community. Today we speak about the hybrid traits, but I would like, on the beginning of my expose, that we have a hybrid war, the brutal hybrid war, and the state it's not in the out of the impact on this hybrid war. They are the members on the hybrid war, but and I don't speak today like the professor exactly, because if I start to speak like the professor, you're my colleague, you know that we can to speak about the definition of the terms, but it is the big classroom speech. I would like to speak in the short like the expert, especially in the couple terms. General, the Russian war against the Ukraine, it's not only an assault on Ukraine's statehood, but a directly strategy offensive against the Europe, against the NATO. The Kremlin's objective is to weaken Europe's democratic cohesion through military pressure, hybrid operations. I tell that it's the hybrid war, it's not the only operations, exactly like the really hybrid war, and narrative manipulations designed to fracture society resilience, undermine defense support for Ukraine, and erode trust in Euro-Atlantic institution. It is the main point about the three key concepts illustrate the current landscape in the Europe, but in the world, the general. It is the resilience, defense, and very interesting, sovereignism. If we was on the lecture, I will start to speak from the sovereignism and the fourth theory, ideology theory of the Dugin, because it is the basic of the attack in the Europe and in the NATO. But we will start in the another list, start from the resilience. Without the definition, the resilience refers to the ability of the society to withstand pressure, adapt, and resist foreign influence. But not exactly foreign influence. We have very often the influence in the society, the spring for the society. Ukraine has demonstrated exceptional society and institutional resilience, rapid military adaptation, civilian readiness, continue of essential service under attack, and strong moral. This resilience has been crucial in countering both Russia's military aggression and its disinformation campaign. The open question is how resilient smaller European society, such as our country, Macedonia, are two similar hybrid pressures. A question required transparent assessment from institution, academia, media, and political actors. Maybe I have some very, very big group of the questions about the preparing to Europe to transformation from the normal peace function in the war function, because we have the seriously problem. Problem is the undermined, under thinking, under understanding what the happened reality in Ukraine and what the happened reality in our society. The second term is the defense. Defense encompasses the state's capacity to protect his territory and population. It's the basic aim of the all states, because across the defense we must to protect the territory, like the state territory, and population on the biologic minimum for life. Because territory without the nation, without the people, it's not the state. It is the pillars of the states. Ukraine's defense system has shown us organizational strength, support disability by NATO and EU partners. Russia's hybrid efforts increasingly aim not only to break Ukraine's defense from within, but to disrupt and discourage Western military, financial, and political support to Ukraine, a core vulnerability Moscow systematically targets. In this concept, we must be together, all of us. When I speak the all of us, not the personality, all of us, but it's not more significant to be personality oriented to support the Ukraine. I speak the must to be oriented like the states, like the members of the NATO and the EU, and the partners with you, the states who make the steps in the EU. And truth of the term is the sovereignism. It is the exactly Kremlin engineered narrative used to depict NATO and EU members as non-sovereignty. One of situation in the last year in the Prague during the GlobSec conference, I have a very interesting conversation with the Greek Minister of Defense, Dendias. I intentionally asked him, like professor on the exam to students, does it the Greek most sovereignty like the member of NATO in EU, or before in the time when the independent? Exactly. The minister answered to me that now, like the member of EU and NATO, there is the most sovereignties because they're using the instrument of the associations. I know this answer, but I would like to only test the thinking in the European Union, especially because we have the problem with Greece in the past. In practice, this narrative of Russia fuels nationalist and anti-Western sentiment of actors in the Balkan. Not especially in the Macedonia, in the whole Balkan is the same situation. They speak about the mythology, they speak about the history, and grow up the nationalism and the anti-Western sentiment. Russia promotes it to weaken Euro-Atlantic integration and destabilizing the state like North Macedonia, Serbia, Bulgaria, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Montenegro, Kosovo, try to Albania. The broader strategic aim is clear. To Russia, strategic is very clear. To use the Balkan as an internal European front and erode the southern flank of NATO, because the southern flank of NATO it's very much the vulnerability. Everything to find the model of the conflict between the Turkey and Greece, Turkey and Bulgaria, Bulgaria with Romania, Bulgaria with Macedonia, Greece with Macedonia, Albania with Macedonia, and everything against everything. Everybody against everybody. The make the steps in the NATO, and it is the not. Good security system to function of the NATO, because the untrusting between the alliance. The hybrid war is therefore not confined to Ukraine. It is a continental challenge targeting democracy, democratic values, institutions, and collective security. It's not only the Balkan. Balkan is the part from them. How to send the Churchill? The Balkan is the soft stomach of the abdomen of the Europe. But it is the truth. So much history, so much mythology have the problem. It is the basic point of the building the hybrid war in the Balkan. Thank you very much, Heather. I will finish here.
Well, thank you very, very much. That was really incredibly useful and insightful, and the points that you make about sovereignty, I think, will actually come up in what we're going to do next. And if we have time, I would be interested in your thoughts. I would also hope that our panelists will stay online as well, because what we're about to do is play. We're playing a clip, two clips from Professor Dr. Edward P. Joseph from Johns Hopkins University, where he is Professor Joseph is an internationally recognized conflict resolution expert with decades of field experience across the Balkans, the Middle East, and Eastern Europe. At Johns Hopkins, he teaches conflict management and international security, and he is a frequent commentator on Ukraine, transatlantic security, and Russian aggression, and he has served also in senior roles with NATO, the UN, and international missions. So, as I said, Dr. Joseph is not here today, so we're taking his contribution virtually, and what I'm going to play are two clips from an interview that he gave to Civil this week about two proposals that are linked that he has made before the relevant government body in the United States. That's the U.S. House Committee on Foreign Affairs. And he testified regarding his proposals, which he suggests would be big breakthroughs and ways forward for the Balkans and Europe. Just for clarity, I will summarize really quickly that the first proposal suggests that the path of Serbia and Kosovo into NATO, that this be linked, that the two should be invited together. And he makes a case for the impacts this would have in the Balkans and in Ukraine. And I don't know how much he'll get into it here, but in the wider interview, he gets into how this would, how this could actually be consented to. Then there is a second proposal. I'll only summarize it briefly, but that is to implement the Kosovo model that was envisaged and by the UN Resolution 1244, that is the model of creating an international protectorate, not for all time, but for a period of time in the Donbass. So first we'll hear his first proposal where he talks about, you need to go.
One moment, Heather.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I will go in the public. And
okay.
Before I would like to salute to Roger and Wolfgang.
Sorry? Oh, I mean, if you'd like, you might want to comment on this. You don't have to,
no
but you might really. This is very relevant.
Does the public to look at this?
Oh, they'll see. They'll see. Yeah. But yeah, everyone can.
Okay. No
but
problem.
I think you might be very interested in commenting on this. So we'll do the first proposal first, and then. Yes, please.
First, thank you very much for this opportunity, and great to be with you and your important audience there. And the answer to the question is, my approach would have transformative impact in the Balkans and supplementary significant impact on the effort to end the war in Ukraine. So these are two different levels of impact. The greatest impact will be absolutely transformative in the region, which has indirect impact on the war in Ukraine because it puts additional pressure on Vladimir Putin. My approach would see Russia and China, both lose their primary avenue of influence in the region. One statistic on China, let me just share. 96% of Chinese foreign investment in the Balkans is, guess where? In Serbia. And for Vladimir Putin, in the Russia context, Serbia is the platform through which Russia still has influence in the region, and especially by exploiting the Kosovo issue, which he has applied in the Ukraine theater as well. And we should be very clear about that. That for Putin, these matters are in his head, are quite pertinent, and I would even say emotionally for Vladimir Putin, who sees the Kosovo 1999 NATO strikes on Kosovo in very personal terms when Russia was weak and marginalized, and sees this as part of his overall grievance against the West. This classic statement where he said the greatest catastrophe in history was the collapse of the Soviet Union. Kosovo typified that. It was the proof of that. And he carries around this burden, and I say just very concisely that bringing Serbia into NATO, after Putin has made this career of assailing the 1999 Kosovo strike and using that as justification in Ukraine, this will have a significant impact. I would compare it to the sinking of the Moskva. By removing Serbia from Kosovo's orbit, bringing Serbia into NATO, this is basically taking away Russia's Moskva in the Balkans.
Okay, we will discuss that first clip, but first we'll play the second, where Professor Joseph is speaking of implementing the Kosovo model envisaged by UN Resolution 1244. That is the model of creating an international protectorate, not for all time, but for a period of time in the Donbass. What I will say is that just given who we have in the room, I won't be surprised if I hear a gasp or two. This could bring some controversy, this proposal, but I would love for us to all hear it and then discuss it.
3 reasons. One, for the United States and its partners who are trying to negotiate and bring an end to this war, as the White House, of course, is the one leading this effort. 2, what it would give to Ukraine, and 3, what it would give to Russia. Because you have to remember, Russia's a factor here, and no peace works unless you can get both sides to accept it. But why does the Kosovo model? Now, of course, the Kosovo model requires a pressure that in this current context doesn't exist. But we have to remember, this current effort can collapse. The ball is in the court in Moscow after this recent meeting, and this could collapse. And when it collapses, then people will say, well, what do we do now? We're just giving up? And so you could have a tension. The advantage of the Kosovo model, this is based on after the NATO bombing, 1244. You have, first of all, you have the context where Vladimir Putin is the champion of 1244. So even though people say, well, that's different, Serbia was defeated. Yes, but we have Vladimir Putin, who is constantly championing the 1244 and saying there has to be full respect for 1244. And what else does Vladimir Putin say? He says Kosovo and Ukraine, and this is a quote, are absolutely the same. That's what he continues to, both in actions and in words, including with the UN Secretary General. And he said, and he says, basically, NATO did this to Ukraine, to Kosovo, I can do it to Ukraine. So we have a context here, even though you can say, well, this is different and that's different. Well, Vladimir Putin doesn't see any difference. He repeatedly says the two situations are the same. So what does this achieve, the Kosovo model? The 1244, the essence of it was it neither declared Kosovo independence independent of Serbia, nor did it deny. It neither declared nor denied. It came in this middle ground. And that's what's so important for the U.S. as a negotiator here, because we know what the key problem is, the security guarantees. We know that. And we know that Russia, of course, wants to press the advantage, and Ukraine insists it's security guarantees. So we know that. So the beauty of the Kosovo model, first for the negotiators, is it takes the question of sovereignty out of the picture. So it's no longer this question of who owns the Donbass. And once you take that out of who controls this, you make it much easier for the sides to negotiate on the other issues. And that's, here we come to this part B, as I said, 3 parts. For President Zelensky, he will be able to say, look, this region is still part of Ukraine. And eventually, under this Kosovo model, there will be a referendum. And he will tell his citizens, our citizens, because there will be peacekeeping troops will come in, as in Kosovo, because there will be UN administration, as in Kosovo, or OSCE, also present in Kosovo. Because of that, our citizens who are now displaced from there will be able to return. And then eventually there'll be a referendum. And the people will decide. And he can say this to his people rather than being forced to now just give away the land. And what will that allow for Vladimir Putin? That will allow Vladimir Putin first to see the sovereignty. There will be zero exercise of sovereignty in any of this territory by Ukraine. So formally, Zelensky can say this, but just as we see in Kosovo, Serbia is not able to have any show. There's no flags or any, even symbolic shows of sovereignty, and that will happen. So that Putin will get that. And more importantly, what does Putin really want? And why is this plausible? Putin wants territory. And he wants more than just these additional parts that, around Kherson or Kharkiv, that they're discussing. He wants more. He wants maximum that he can get to have maximum pressure on Kyiv. And guess what? Under my approach, under the Kosovo model, Ukraine can afford to give more territory, to put more territory at risk that Putin wants, that his forces do not control now, and theoretically may never control. But under my approach, Ukraine will be ceding more territory, even territory that some would say, and in Ukraine would say, this is very dangerous, because if this goes to Russia, this will put our capital at risk. But he can afford to do that because this is going to a third party. There will be peacekeeping troops, and this will be under UN administration, and all of this will be ratified at the Security Council, which Putin wants, and there will eventually be a referendum. So in this, do you see, in this sense, each side is gaining something. So for Putin, he might say, well, look, I like this Trump approach better, or I want to take my gains immediately and have them. But under my approach, he potentially could get more, but they have to stop the fighting, and he has to allow these insertion of peacekeeping troops, and he has to say that this is going to be all subject to an internationally managed referendum in the end. Yes, he has to accept that. But remember, the argument, if you were real American, true, trying to negotiate, you have a very strong argument. Because you just say to him, well, Vladimir Putin, we're just doing what you say you insist upon in Kosovo, and what you say is absolutely the same. And that's my argument.
Okay. I think we're going to need maybe 5 more minutes, but I believe we started 5 minutes late. I'm not sure who we still have online. I believe Yevhen Tymbalenko is no longer online. And I would really like to hear from Professor Andronov about some of these questions of, you were making points about sovereignty, how sovereignty can be seen to even increase when countries are part of international organizations like the EU and NATO, and what your thoughts might be about what is being proposed here. If you don't mind being put on the spot like this.
is very clearly that the state made the sovereignism on the traditional basic of the state. It is the territory, nations, language, and culture. In the international communication, we don't have strictly sovereignism, because the entering in the international organization, we give the part from our sovereignism for the take the more power in the international community. In the practice, it is the example, the Macedonia alone, like the territory is the small, like the population is the small, like the economy is the small, but the speaking that it's the Macedonia can to have the equality power in the international community, like the one USA or maybe one Russia, China, United Kingdom, French, like the members of the UN and the Security Council with veto steps. It's not. It's everything clearly for everyone. But if the Macedonia to be the part from the European Union, our sovereignty will grow up. How? In the European Union, we can to have the rights like all of the members in the European Union, and we can to be part from the decision making in the European Union, like the global actor. It was the point of my speaking with the Dendias last year, because it is the grow up of the sovereignty of the state. If we try to understand the fourth political ideology from the Dugin, we can to see that Russia made the permutation of the overview on the sovereignty, and it is the very interesting, the excluding the conservatism like the theory, but using the conservatism in the building of the theory of sovereignism like the values, but it's not the true, because the true is the authoritarianism. The sovereignism, the cover like the term authoritarianism. And the short comment of the Edward. We met with Edward a couple months ago in the Budva conference, and he has a very interesting statement, the public statement, it's not the private statement, that the European Union, that for the European Union finished of the time of the Kennedy, that the USA will fight for the democracy in everything in the world. Today we can to see what how happened the international politics in the USA. It is for us, like the Europeans, it must to be the indicator and must to be motivation for the grow up the European security and go against the Russia attack in the Ukraine more. And in this context, it's not can to have a same overview in the situation in Kosovo and Serbia and Ukraine and Donbas and Lugansk area, especially the question about the Crimea, because we have the 10 years ago the situation that the Russia speak and in the constitution put these three areas. It have the very, very interesting logic from the Russian side, looking that they want the all control of the territory. It's the against of the international law. It is the clearly aggressive, but we have the very big problem in the ground, and Russia against the using the situation in the Balkan for himself, like the empire grow up.
Thank you. That is. I wish we could keep going, because this is really helpful and useful. I believe we have Roger Casale online. If we don't, I would invite Jabir Durralla to come up and speak a bit about this interview that these excerpts were taken from. But if Roger's here, perhaps Roger, you could speak a bit about what you heard from Professor Joseph. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Well, Edward is a very clear-sighted man, and he has set out a very interesting proposal. And I think the Westminster Alliance for Ukraine, we can get this proposal discussed with Alex Sobel MP, the chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group in the UK Parliament, and hopefully with the help of Francesco and Emanuele Ericchiello from Centro Studi Internazionali, with colleagues in the Italian Parliament. And we need clear thinking and strategic insight, and it was very interesting to hear Oliver's comments. I just think that where we are at the moment is we need a ceasefire in order for a kind of political process, which is what Edward is talking about, to open up. Unless we have a ceasefire, unless we have an end to the killing and the violence, we can't open the kind of dialogue and opportunities where there's something in it for everybody, as Edward has described. We need to have that ceasefire first. And I just fear that Putin's not really interested in a ceasefire. He's running a war machine, and he wants to keep running it. And so we need to arm Ukraine so that it can defend itself. And that's the way to get a ceasefire, is to give Ukraine the means to defend itself militarily. And we need to do the same in Europe. Because, while Edward was speaking yesterday, Mark Rutte, the NATO Secretary General, was speaking at the Munich Security Conference outreach meeting in Berlin, and saying that Europe needs to prepare for war. But I think Europe is already at war, and we know that has a cybersecurity dimension. We heard from Jochen about that, and we also know, we heard from Francesca, we also know that we cannot lose this fight. It's part of a global conflict, and to lose the war in Ukraine means to lose the fight for the future of Ukraine, the fight for the future of Europe. So very happy to see how we can get a wider airing for Edward's very clear-sighted views and discussion. And I was involved with Kosovo quite a lot myself when I was an MP, and it's important to learn from experience and to apply it to today. But I think the priority must be to make sure that Ukraine has the arms it needs to obtain a ceasefire, because unless we strengthen our defences, we're not going to see a ceasefire. Putin's interest is in continuing to prosecute the war, and we must trust. I repeat my message before: we must have faith and must have trust in ourselves. And as Oliver said, we must stand together. We must cooperate. The whole thing is going to be very, very, very messy. It's going to be very costly. We're going to have to, somewhere along the lines, make compromises, and certainly we're going to have to make sacrifices. But in the end, we will prevail, and a political process will open up. And I think it's vital that we use this time, and perhaps just make this my final point, to do as Edward's doing, is to think about the future, even in the present crisis. The new Ukraine and the new order in the world will emerge from this conflict. We don't know what it looks like yet. We're a little bit like the wise men on their journey at this time of Christmas. We're not exactly sure where we're going, but we do know why we're traveling. We do know who we're traveling with, and we are following our values, and that is what is going to be our compass and going to orientate us as we build the new world order together, starting in Ukraine. So yes, these discussions about political process in the future are absolutely vital, and they need to take place now. But the priority must be to defend Ukraine, because we should be under no illusions whatsoever about the threat posed by Vladimir Putin to Ukraine, to Europe, and to the global order, and his determination to continue to prosecute the war. And the only way to stand up to a bully is to show your strength, and that's what we need to do now, collectively, urgently, and with all the resources and resolve that we can muster. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Roger, very much. I wish that we had more time, but it's 11:42, and we want to keep the conference moving. So let's do that. Thank you so much for all of our online contributors. Thank you so much, Professor Andronov. This has been a real pleasure, and thank you everyone for coming.